Elementary Science Class 6. Fibre to fabric. Variety in fabrics. Maisie, do you know what fabrics are made of?
No, I don't. Can you tell me more?
Sure. Let's start with Activity 1. We can visit a nearby tailoring shop and collect cuttings of fabrics left over after stitching. We can feel and touch each piece of fabric and try to label some of the fabrics as cotton, silk, wool, or synthetic after asking for help from the tailor.
That sounds interesting. What's next?
Next, we can move to Activity 2. We can select a piece of cotton fabric, and if yarns are visible, we can gently pull one out with a pin or a needle. We can find that a fabric is made up of yarns arranged together. What are these yarns made of?
Oh, I see. What's Activity 3?
Activity 3 is taking out a yarn from a piece of cotton fabric and placing it on the table. Then, we can press one end of the yarn with our thumb and scratch the other end of the yarn along its length with our nail. We can find that at this end, the yarn splits up into thin strands labeled in Activity 1. These thin strands of thread that we see are made up of still thinner strands called fibres.
Wow, I had no idea. Where do these fibers come from?
The fibers of some fabrics such as cotton, jute, silk, and wool are obtained from plants and animals. These are called natural fibers. Wool and silk fibers are obtained from animals. Some examples of synthetic fibers are polyester, nylon, and acrylic. Some plant fibers. Cotton. Maisie, have you ever made wicks for oil lamps? What do you use for making these wicks?
I've never made wicks before. I'm not sure what to use.
Well, cotton wool is a great option. It's also used for filling mattresses, quilts, or pillows. Take some cotton wool, pull it apart, and look at its edges. What do you observe?
The small, thin strands that I see are made up of cotton fibers.
That's right. Where does this cotton wool come from?
I'm not sure.
It is grown in the fields. Cotton plants are usually grown at places having black soil and warm climate. The fruits of the cotton plant, cotton bolls, are about the size of a lemon. After maturing, the bolls burst open, and the seeds covered with cotton fibers can be seen. Have you ever seen a cotton field that is ready for picking? It looks like a field covered with snow.
No, I haven't. That sounds amazing.
From these bolls, cotton is usually picked by hand. Fibers are then separated from the seeds by combing. This process is called ginning of cotton. Ginning was traditionally done by hand. These days, machines are also used for ginning. Jute. Jute fiber is obtained from the stem of the jute plant. It is cultivated during the rainy season. The jute plant is normally harvested when it is at the flowering stage. The stems of the harvested plants are immersed in water for a few days. The stems rot, and fibers are separated by hand. To make fabrics, all these fibers are first converted into yarns. Yarn to fabric. Spinning. Hey, Maisie, today, I'm going to teach you about yarn to fabric. Did you know that the process of making yarn from fibers is called spinning?
No, I didn't. How is it done?
You hold some cotton wool in one hand and pinch some cotton between the thumb and forefinger of the other hand. Then, gently start pulling out the cotton while continuously twisting the fibers. This brings the fibers together to form a yarn. Weaving and knitting.
What are main processes of making fabrics from yarns?
The two main processes are weaving and knitting. Weaving is the process of arranging two sets of yarns together to make a fabric. On the other hand, knitting is the process of using a single yarn to make a piece of fabric.
How is weaving done?
Weaving of fabric is done on looms, which are either hand-operated or power-operated. The yarns are much thinner than our paper strips, of course.
What about knitting?
Knitting is done by hand and also on machines. Socks and many other clothing items are made of knitted fabrics. Weaving and knitting are used for making different kinds of fabric, which are used for a variety of clothing items. History of clothing material. Have you ever wondered what materials people used in ancient times for clothes?
No, I haven't. What did they use?
It appears that in those times, people used the bark and big leaves of trees or animal skins and furs to cover themselves. After people began to settle in agricultural communities, they learned to weave twigs and grass into mats and baskets. Vines, animal fleece, or hair were twisted together into long strands. These were woven into fabrics. The early Indians wore fabrics made out of cotton that grew in the regions near the river Ganga. Flax is also a plant that gives natural fibers. In ancient Egypt, cotton as well as flax were cultivated near the river Nile and were used for making fabrics. In those days, stitching was not known. People simply draped the fabrics around different parts of their body. Many different ways of draping fabrics were used.